League TBD. What is up? No Fun League podcast post week 10 episode here with our top three. We have the one, two, and three seed. We're the big three, like we started a league.
Who's who?
And
Fuck the big three.
it's just big me. Yeah.
Change.
Well, we got a little app for you today. Nico, how are we feeling?
We're feeling good. We had a all respect to the Raiders of the Lost Shark. I'm a part of the Raiders Hive, as I have repeatedly said. But this was a light week facing a 60 piece from Jesse and Co. on his birthday, which, best wishes to him, but that's a little tough. So I had a light week, and we've got a tough date with Vince Young's dream team coming up. We got our two top receivers on bye. So, but we're chugging along at 7-3. This is my first time having a team with a winning record this late in the season, so we feel good.
Love it. Dan, how are you doing since our last episode 5 days ago?
Yeah, par for the course, I guess. We're still believing in the funky bunch. We just added Cooper Rush, so there's no turning back now.
Added Cooper Rush about 10 minutes ago. Gonna devote all episode to dissecting that one. First, though, we got some older trades. We talked about them with Brennan, but we got the man responsible for it all here. So
He's been
his
busy.
his oldest one was sending Luke, Chris Olave, Luke's own 26 third back, and Pat's 25 third. And he got Luke's 27 first, JMO, and Luke's 25 second. I mean, should we just like go one by one? You want to give your thoughts on each or?
Yeah, I can go quickly on this. I mean, I think as is going to be the case with the Brennan trade, we'll talk about in a few minutes. Hindsight is going to make them both look like quite unadvantageous or disadvantageous deals for the people on the other end, as I kind of insinuated with my Grim Reaper meme in the chat today. But I don't know. I mean, Olave is such a tough blow. You hate to see it. Dr. Hospital pass Derek Carr is at it again, potentially shortening a great receiver's career. But as I don't know if it was in the last pod, but you've mentioned I've been slowly accumulating
27
27
first.
picks.
Yeah.
So, there may be a master plan there that may or may not materialize. But so yeah, I was happy to get those picks. JMO is he's such like a boomer bust player that it's hard to start him week after week, but seeing earlier in the year kind of how he was integrated into the offense, I'm more hopeful about him than I this year than I was last year. And he's still, what is he? Is he 23? Yeah, he's still 23 years old. I drafted him, so it's a homecoming for him. So obviously I feel great about the trade with what happened to Olave, which was really unfortunate, but I hope Olave comes back strong and it works out for both parties. Being very diplomatic about it.
There you go. Yeah, I've learned recently that you really don't want to say anything against Maximum Aura on the podcast. He makes you pay in the chat.
Yeah.
Very smart. Next, you went to Tom and you sent Tom Kate Otten, Garrett Wilson, who was a franchise cornerstone, and Jesse's 25 first, which is shaping up to be around the two pick. And you yourself got Roma Dunze, Jared Goff, your own first this year back, and Tom's second.
Yeah, so I think remembering what y'all said on the podcast a few days ago that it felt like it made sense for both parties, and I still feel that way. I think not that much has changed in the few weeks since it happened, it's Dynasty, and I try not to rise with the tides of whatever's been happening the past week too much. But Kate Otten has looked great, and Tommy got a nice return on him from you, which I thought was another trade that made sense. He's been really performing, and with Godwin out rest of the season and Mike Evans, potentially missing more time, I thought it made sense to add him as a win now guy. But Tommy, that was a great return. He bought at the right time. I told Luke I was thinking about kind of like nickel and diming Tommy and be like, oh, how about a third instead of Otten? But um, Tommy is a busy beaver, so sometimes communication can be
Yeah.
tricky. So, I was like, he gave me a very fair offer and I respect Tommy's time, so I'm gonna accept. But yeah, it hurt to lose Wilson. I still have him in another dynasty league, so we're rooting for him. And I think I told Pat is like after spending 3 years just hawkishly looking at points for, be like, I hope I'm the lowest. I need the highest pick. I was like, I don't want to do this another year. Even, it's am I like making myself feel better a little bit? Maybe now that Jesse doesn't look like the 104 and he looks like maybe the 101. But if that's Ashton Genty, in LA or in Dallas, maybe it'll burn a little bit on draft day, but so be it. And we've talked about before the pod. Danny and I especially are big Rome believers. And with Shane Waldron out, Eberflus next, beef up the O line this offseason. I still have high hopes for the Bears. And getting my pick back was, nice insurance if I miss the playoffs because I'm in a good spot now at 7-3, but you never know. My team is fading a little bit. So if I end up missing the playoffs, at least this is something to ease that pain, getting like a top 5 or 6 pick.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely your biggest of the trades. Whole lot of, I can't believe Garrett Wilson went. Are you not a big believer in him anymore?
I mean, I think the week after I traded him, he had, his incredible catch in a 30-point game. And I'm trying to, let me pull up Tommy's roster, but I think he's still like wide receiver 4 on the year. So, I love Garrett Wilson, but I think this past week is kind of emblematic of what the Garrett Wilson experience has been like, where, one week it looks great, then the next week the Jets are jetting, and it's just not that fun. And with Rodgers on the way out, and just after talking up the Bears, maybe I'm gonna be a little bit hypocritical talking about like institutional incompetence, but the Jets aren't really an organization. Well, I don't know. I have a lot of Jets across my leagues, but I just with Rodgers potentially on the way out and the Jets you can never trust. I was like, I like getting Rome, getting that stack. As our Cooper Rush manager here, he's a fan of the stack, so I'm a fan of the stack too.
Heck.
Not with JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, true, you parted with that, but yeah, it hurt to lose Wilson, but I like what I got back.
Last Nico exchange was the probably most famous one, in which he sent Stefon Diggs, who was like wide receiver 6 at the time, Jordan Mason, and his 26th third to Brennan for Joe Mixon and Brennan's 27 second.
Yeah, I mean,
Starting to look like you got the two most valuable pieces in that one.
yeah, it's tough. Mixon or Jordan Mason was kind of DOA. He just immediately got hurt, and then now McCaffrey's back, so that was kind of that was brutal. Diggs, maybe he'll be good next year. You never know, but to chalk it up to the game. I feel bad for Brennan, but his team is still sick, so I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, he's still making that push. So he really could have used a receiver, seeing how, as we mentioned last week, Room's not exactly as blue chip as once thought.
Hmm.
But and then most recently, someone other than Nico got in on the action, and Tom sent me Kate Otten and 2/6 for my 25 second and third, and Luke's 25 third, and my 26 third.
A
That
whole
one,
lot of thirds.
I have very little memory of completing, but it's pretty close to what I had offered Tom. So I think all he did was add a third. And I think in my state I was in game day in Knoxville, Tennessee, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll be able to live with losing another third next year. And that was that. So any thoughts on that one?
I mean, I haven't thrown it into my trade value charts, but the math's up to me. Tom's added to that treasure chest, just adding to his pool of picks, gonna keep adding more young talent. And Kate Otten looks like a legit contending tight end right now. So, another good trade.
Yeah, not much to add. I liked Otten, picked him up a while ago. I can't say I've been grinding Cade Otton tape for years, but I remember I picked him up last year. Oh, this guy looks all right, and he'll do you well. So yeah, it made sense, like Danny said.
Yeah, we shall see. I don't know exactly how much Evans coming back is gonna sink the scoring, but I think there will still be a decent amount. All right, now to our main segment of the day. We are going to draft cores from around the league. So I guess technically we're inheriting whole teams here, but we're really focusing on at least in my mind, like the beef of the starting lineup, looking 3, 4 years out. So teams that are towards the bottom of the table right now, but have some real solid pieces that are only going to get better with time. Those are definitely going to rise from their current stature in the league.
Yeah,
We're going
keep.
in.
I
What's
was gonna
up?
say keeping picks in mind too is important for some of the teams that have kind of hemorrhaged producing players and looking at the picks and what those people could potentially be. So it all comes into the fold.
Sure. So I thought that we would start in current seating order, and Dan would take the 101.
I didn't want to be at the 101, if I'm totally honest.
I'll
Uh,
hop in at the. Want to go
You,
reverse
you
order?
could
I'll
go
hop in
reverse.
101.
no, I feel bad. I'll take my spot. I'll take my medicine. Uh, and I'll take the big steppers. Um, there's another very clear candidate for short-term contention. I think if we're talking about 3 years from now, my team's probably going to be on the wrong side or staring down the wrong side of a cliff. That I think Nico's team is just going to be dead on, still potentially gaining momentum as a contender. He'll be, assuming the running backs hold value, close to what my team is now, probably better than that. Um, and I mean, are any of us gonna be shocked if Nico wins a ring this year? Like he's definitely good enough to contend, and he has about as much long-term youth value as anybody. So I'll take Nico 101.
I think there's a clear top three. So I just in the quick time I took to peek for this segment, gave this team a hair over the other one, who I'm sure will be taken next, but I'm gonna go Tom Griffin at the 102. Tom obviously has the picks like we were just talking about. Huge war chest going there that spans multiple years, I believe. He's got 3 firsts this year, 2 firsts next year, um,
And just
including
his own in 27.
and just his own in 27, but the possible 101 definite top two, I think, this year with Jesse's as well as his own, which is looking to be top three. Um, Plus, you got Joe Burrow. I had a lot to say about Joe Burrow this offseason, but it's not looking super true right now. Jaden Daniels, arguably the top Superflex Dynasty asset at this point. I don't know that I'm ready to call it that, but it's close enough that I'm not going to call you stupid for doing it. That's a crazy young firepower heavy quarterback room. And then you'd throw in Garrett Wilson, who, I mean, we have our question marks about, but him, Lad looks great. He's got, I mean, JSN, Keon, Devontae Smith, obviously. And yeah, I think the picks will really flesh out this lineup, and all those guys I don't see progressing much anytime soon.
Yeah, I think Tommy's played it really well in terms of, his running backs don't score any points any week, which is kind of keeping him in the bottom, but everywhere else on his team, he looks really strong. Yeah, like you said, Burrow, Daniels is fantastic. A lot of his receivers are kind of in the fantasy wide receiver two zone, like with like Devonta. Well, Addison's been super underwhelming, but he's still talented. And it's year two, so can't punt. Same thing with JSN. He had that spike week, but he's been up and down. So I think Tommy's hoping that one or two of those guys, including Ladd and Worthy, kind of emerge as like fringe wide receiver ones with Garrett Wilson. But like he said, he's got that whole war chest of picks to flesh it out. And I think that for the third pick, I don't know if we're on the same page, but I'm going with the funky bunch.
That
It's
was
still
my third.
Jamar.
Yeah.
It's Jamar, Jettis, CD, and Nico. And it's kind of hard to think in dynasty terms like more than 3 years. That's the number of picks were allotted. And looking past that, it's like, who knows? But all those guys are still going to be in their primes or at the tail end of their primes. I mean, Jamar is still 24, which is nuts. Feels like he's been around for so long, and he's the number two player in fantasy right now, behind only Lamar Jackson. And Josh Allen is still in quarterback terms in his early prime. Or well, I don't know, thoroughly, solidly in his prime, but I think in 3 years he's still going to be humming along and great. I think the real challenge for Danny, as I know he's aware of, is I mean Dak is under contract, so you got to hope that Dak will be good and will continue to produce like he did last year. Obviously, this year has been quite underwhelming, and now he's done, which hurts his and CD's value, but long term, that's probably okay. But rebuilding the running back room, getting some more quarterback depth, tight end like Kittle and Kelsey this year is just phenomenal. But in 3 years, one or both of them will probably not be playing anymore. Or do you still have Kittle? You still have Kittle, right? Yeah. Um, but having, one or two of them will be retired at that point, so that may be a challenge. But I think Danny is still with those receivers, with Josh Allen, is still you can't say he's not a top three long-term team. Because if he even needed to, he could flip any of those four receivers into like a whole war chest of picks just by themselves. They're that valuable. So
Sure.
he's still in a great spot. All right, and now since we're doing a snake draft, I'm going again, and I'm gonna go with, you know, this one was tricky. I think three teams that were pretty close for me. And this is not I'm not doing this to, cater to our wonderful host of this pod, but I think
Thanks.
Lamar, as I texted them before the podcast, I was getting, Ryan likes to throw stones at my glass house of where I'm defending CJ Stroud, and I had to buck back and be like, no, I still believe in the pick, but he's his well, it was Herbert in a first for Lamar, that looks like just an incredible an incredible move. And I think Lamar alone is he's like I think you mentioned Jaden Daniels could be the cornerstone asset, but I think it's still Lamar at this point. Him and Allen vying for that 1-2, and then Jaden a little bit below. But Lamar and Jordan Love is great. You still have Kirk in tow, and I know Penix got brought in, but you never know. So that's a great wide quarterback room. Amon-Ra, Gibbs are fantastic, and you've given up some seconds here and there, but after this year, you have control of your first and second, so it's not like your war chest is the same as Danny's, where it's going to be tricky to replenish. But so yeah, I think you're in a great spot. You know, Terry's been revitalized by the career Swamper
Oh, it's so
revitalized.
awesome.
I
It's
know this is
so
highlight of your year, and then Najee's still clunking along, but
awesome.
yeah, I think you're in great shape. It may be a little tricky next year, especially if like guys like Sutton and Mooney and Najee don't produce in the same way, and Montgomery gets another year older. But I think you're in a great spot.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I obviously agreed with the Funky Bunch pick. I agree with me going four. I think I'm a little bit clear of anyone else that would have gone there. I don't know that there's a tier cluster, but yeah, I'm excited about this team, and I've tried my best not to sell the future. Um, so that puts me on the clock, and I go with the current bottom of the table team in Pat Moremile. I just closed the entire app.
The experiment.
The experiment, I believe, 3 years from now, will be a huge boom. Um, Tua obviously has his questions. And AR is not looking too great. That's the one big hindrance, and I have lumping this team in with me. But Pat still has his own first couple 3 seconds, and then first and a couple seconds, including Jesse's next year. Real decent draft capital. He's got Devon Achan, who I was lower on, but now I'm finally coming around on DJ Moore, Zay Flowers. I still believe in Kyle Pitts, Drake London, all guys that I would not mind having. And like we were saying, we believe in the Bears long term, despite everything right now and generational incompetence. So yeah, I think DJ Moore turns it around. Zay Flowers, who I thought was kind of like a boom bust flex play on steroids, I think is now turning into just a bona fide top 15 receiver. Um, and yeah, I think it's a fine little core Pat has going, and I think he's gonna steer it in the right direction. Also, shout out Trey Benson. I love Trey Benson.
Well, now I'm up, and I am kind of stuck in the mud here. Um, I really liked since the one pick, almost all of your picks. Ryan, I think there's a clear top two. I do think it's Nico and I, and then I would have taken Tom third. Tom belongs in that category because he is super young, super talented. Jaden Daniels hitting the way he has really feels like a piece just clicked in and made everything else fall in perfectly. Like I'm with y'all, Tom set, but we're talking about a 3-year window, 4-year window. Who's going to be winning rings for the next 2, 3 years? It's the Funky Bunch. Um,
Fair.
and now we're at a spot where I'm looking at a couple contending teams. We can run through. I mean, this is the sixth pick. We're doing 2 rounds, or are we going to snake past this third round or past
I
this?
think I think we want to,
We can do all of them,
yeah,
or
Oh, okay.
we can start rattling them off now.
Well, yeah. So our leftover teams are Maximum Aura with Luke, Zach, Brennan, Vince Young's Dream Team, the Raiders, and Shelly Swift's Invite List. And it's hard. We have a kind of combination there. There's some contention. There's Jesse, who's gone super young, and I mean hasn't done a terrible job of it. He's just starting with nothing. But I got to take again, just look at teams that I think could really win rings in the next 3 years, 4 years. Who's most likely to actually get one? And I think that's the Rouse House. That's Vince Young's dream team. Um, a lot of question marks. The running back room is so old, but if next year either of CMC or Derrick Henry continue to produce and Kyron's there, he's still got a great running back room. He has a lot of talent at receiver. And for these top end teams, like almost all of them, Luke included, have had to give up firsts to do it. Brennan still has his full stock of firsts. So, yes, he's very old, but he's very old in a high level contender still. This season, he's probably in a rough spot, but we'll see. And he still has that long term flexibility with 3 firsts.
fair enough. You got the turn as well.
I do have the turn, and so there, I guess I'll take my other contender. I'm gonna keep pushing for rings, so I'll round it out with the teams that I think could win one this year, and I'll take the invite list. Um, Again, you're just starting to look at teams where the questions are piling up. He was thin at receiver. He's banged up at receiver this year. Um, so it's another example where I think the contending status for this year, maybe he's on the outside looking in of the team's hunting, but he's definitely still good enough to maybe squeak in this year. He's still good enough to be in the contention next year. I think Kyler Murray's great. Drake May as a quarterback is a great long-term option. He just made the move for Sam Laporta. The big knock on him, I would say, is that he doesn't have the flexibility Brennan has. He has had to move more of his draft capital to get to the contending spot he's in now. So I do think there's a real world where 2 years from now the floor is he hasn't won and the floor is kind of fallen out hard. But
All right. I thought you were gonna go for sure with my pick here and one of your two. I'm gonna take, not just to get back on his good side, Maximum Aura. Jalen Hurts finally starting to put it together. A couple big weeks. And I love Bo Nix. I really like the way Bo Nix is looking. And I think once they get some like a little more of a core going there instead of just like Devon Vele and Lil Jordan Humphrey like going deep every play.
Top 10 name in the league, by the way, Lil Jordan Humphrey.
Oh, for sure. I really like Bo Nix. And so he's got that going for him. They're both young, they're both capable. He's got McBreezy, who is, I feel like I play him in some league every week, and I can't stand him because I have not one share, but he is very good. Obviously, I pointed out last time that his core is aging, but I think Saquon still has this year, next year, hopefully the year after. I don't know about that third year, but I really feel good about the rest of this season and next season. Chuba Hubbard just got locked down, and things are really interesting there now. We'll have to see Jonathan Brooks, but I can't say that Chuba Hubbard has done anything less than impressed this year. And then as far as picks go, he has Jesse's second as his highest pick this year, which is a first in most dynasty leagues, and first in a couple seconds next year. So I think definitely a fine selection at the 8 pick. I believe that puts us at.
Yes, and I will say there may have been an oversight by one of the drafters in leaving Max
Whoa!
off the board. We got one.
Yo, that was lit.
Yes.
Did I motion somehow to make that happen?
I
Dude,
don't
Rob, it's Rob's fireworks all over again.
Oh, let's
yeah.
go.
I don't know if you moved a muscle.
This is
I know
why
my
we've been podcasting for a
I
year.
know, but my connection's good though, right? I'm not Scheftering it.
No, you're
All right,
good.
cool.
I love that.
Let's go.
All right.
All right, I'll finish this up quickly. It's either gonna, we've got two teams left. We've got the very vocal in the chat, Team Fedor, and then we've got the Raiders Hive. You know, as much as I want to stick with my, Scorpio brethren, Mr. Mir, I'm gonna have to put him in the caboose and then go with Zach at the 9 spot. I think Herbert, even though, the Lamar Herbert trade you made has been great for you, but Herbert's looked really good this year. He had a rushing touchdown this week. I know that's not his MO, and you can't really expect him to be like a true dual threat guy, but you know, with Harbaugh now and the offensive line they have and just kind of the whole offensive infrastructure they have in LA, I think he's a mid to low end quarterback one, but still a guy you're totally happy with as your dynasty quarterback one.
I
You made
agree.
that trade with me. You got Puka, who, I still love, even if his game's a little like Debo-ish, and I'm always afraid of, him getting banged up. But when he plays, he's awesome. I think Waddle's been, maybe if we get to our next segment, he may get a mention in a least valuable player category, but he's still relatively young. He's 25, but I don't know. But I think the big distinguishing factor is that he won as Brock Bowers, who is just such a stud and is the tight end one and is kind of he is to tight ends what like Jettis is to wide receivers. That may be a little premature, but he's really looking like that right now. And then he's got Ryan's first, he's got his own first, he's got control of all his firsts going forward after that. Whereas Jesse, poor Raiders, they got their ring. Banners are forever, so you can't fault it at all. But he doesn't have his first this year. He has two. He has Danny's and he has Luke's first, both of which will be late. So he's not going to be able to replenish with a guy like Genty or Tet McMillan or whoever else is at the top of the draft. Although, late first can turn into real talent. Oh shit, we got 10 minutes. But yeah, I think Jesse's got to bring up the caboose, but maybe in a few years it'll be looking good.
If drafting Jesse came with his ring from last season, where would you guys put Jesse in the rest of this league? You're getting a chip with it.
I don't think he's in the worst spot ever. I think I would rather.
It's better than we were for the expansion.
Sure. I think I would take everyone on this call because I think we have the potential to win multiple without going through hell first. I would take Tom, obviously.
That's where I think we start having some hard decisions. Pat's
I
got a
think
great young core.
I
Pat
think
has a very good young core.
you get no, I think I take the ring and the rebuild over what Pat has right now.
Yeah, Richardson is just that's just such a blow for him taking him where he did. And this is not a great quarterback class, at least how it looks right now. I mean, maybe Shadur's a stud or something, but this is not the year to. It's not like Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and I think a wild card for Pat is Penix and Toe, but you know that's speculatory.
Pat deserves having Michael Penix work out.
Yeah, he really
I
does.
agree.
Drake May's
Very much
footwork though looks good. It does
Drake
look good,
May looks pretty good.
and Neighbors does too
I
for
think the
2/3.
best I think the best thing for this episode, I don't know that we really run anything else. I think Nico, if you just want to talk playoffs, maybe we could not get cut off for once.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll ditch the trivia for maybe another day. As much as I hate to say it about my rival, it's going to be tough to put me above him. I think a flaw he identified and I was a bit prickly about because I didn't quite agree, but I think it's borne out is that this year Larry, let me go first. All right, Danny, I think has got to be the number one seed. Even with CD kind of being, hopefully no more touchdown
Reputation.
passes get caught in the light in AT&T Stadium. But he may go from, an elite wide receiver one this season to a low end wide receiver one, wide receiver two. But if you have Jamar and Jettis and Nico Collins coming back, you can't worry. Kelsey's looked great as of late, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. And Josh Allen is Josh Allen. So Danny's one. I think Ryan has got to be two. Lamar's just been that good. And Gibbs and Monty is fantastic. Amon-Ra, Terry's great. I still think the rest of his wide receiver room is pretty sketchy, but I think with those guys in Love, especially if he can get going, he's been a bit turnover prone and has missed some time. But if he can turn in weeks like he did right after he came back from injury, I think Ryan's got to be two. And then after that, it gets tricky. I think, as much as I love Rob Schefter and what he's done, he's just been just
The worst
brutalized
one.
by injuries.
Yeah.
And
It's cold.
he's now sitting at 5-5. He's tied up with Brennan. So obviously we're all on the same page. It's six teams vying, or it's four teams vying for two playoff spots. So it's gonna come down to those. I almost want to reverse jinx myself and put myself out of it, but I think Hurts and Saquon have looked good enough. Nix and Wilson, to my surprise, have looked really competent as quarterback too. So I'm going to put Luke in, and he's got one win up on the other guys. So I'm going to put Luke at the 3 seed, and then I think at the 4 seed, I do have two. I think if Brennan and I had the same record, I'd go Brennan, but two wins. I mean, he's going to get one on me this week probably. I'm missing Marvin Neighbors, but I'm thinking out loud as we go. So shout out to all the listeners watching me think aloud. Um, so if we're looking at me 7-4, Brendan 6-5 down the stretch, I'm not going to get too nitty gritty into the schedule and go game by game, but as a vote of confidence in myself, I'll put myself at the fourth playoff team, having a date with the Funky Bunch in week or in the first round of the playoffs, which as it went a few weeks ago would not be the most fun thing for me, but I really think it's going to be close between Brennan, Luke, and I for those last two spots. And that's a bit of shade, I guess, the invite list, but it's not his fault. He's just dealt with a lot of injuries. And, he still may get there. His quarterbacks are great, and his running backs are too. But I think that's where I stand.
I like those picks, and I'm 1-4 historically in the first round.
Yeah.
So
Maybe I do want
not
the
the first
matchup.
matchup to draw.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. Obviously, you're pretty bye-weeked up this week, but if you did win, it would really hurt Brennan, help you. Could be a real deciding week.
God.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to go week by week looking at matchups. I think those are four fair picks. I have you firmly in it, not to jinx, but like I was saying last week, I think it's three vying for one, and poor Rob, man, it's been brutal. But we'll see. There's still a chance. All right. Any closing remarks out of anybody? Maybe our guest to start.
Oh man, closing remarks. I want to see more trade activity. I feel like I've been keeping it afloat with big deals. So let's get something going. My line's always open. I know these guys' lines are always open. So, you know, I don't want to force anyone into making a bad move, but trades are fun. So let's see some trades.
There's nothing like the crack of watching that trade has been completed go through.
Oh yeah.
Really thought we were going to have something crazy to talk about, and then it was just Cooper Rush.
Caught me off guard.
Any closing words, Dan?
Nope.
All right. Well, finally not getting beat by the buzzer. Let's go. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Now, how do I end the recording?